not every day you get the opportunity to learn from someone who is the very best in the world at the time that they are the very best in the world. This is Brian Cain, your mental performance mastery coach and the host of the Mental Performance Mastery podcast, creator of the Mental Performance Mastery Coaches certification and the 30-day athletes course. And today I am thrilled to bring you a podcast with Corbin Burnes. Corbin is a baseball pitcher with the Milwaukee Brewers. And he first burst onto the scene in 2018, where he went 7-0 with a 2.6 ERA out of the bullpen to help the Brewers clinch an NL Central championship. And then they went on to play in Game 7 of the NLCS, where they lost to the Dodgers, who went on to the World Series. Now, 2019 was not as kind to the Brewers' right-handed pitcher. You see, Corbin started that season in the starting rotation for the Brewers, and he ended the year with a 1-5 record and an 8.82 ERA, which statistically was one of the worst ERAs for any starting pitcher in the game. After being sent down to the minor leagues and back to the bullpen, the Brewers eventually sent Corbin to their spring training complex in Arizona to go to the pitching lab to work on his craft, right, to work on his mechanics of pitching. Well, while visiting the lab in Arizona, which is not so far from my house where I live out there, Corbin's agent asked if I would be willing to meet with him, and obviously would love to. So I met with Corbin at my house for the first time around August, September of 2019, and we kind of went to work on refining and retooling some of the basic approaches to his mental game, his routines, both on and off the field. And you know, after a successful shortened season in 2020, his first year back, where he finished 6th in the NL Cy Young Award voting, given to the best pitcher in baseball, 2021 has brought Corbin even more success. You see, Corbin set a Major League Baseball record all time for starting pitchers by recording 36 strikeouts before issuing his first walk. You see, that record was at 36, and at the time of this podcast recording here in early May 2021, Corbin is at 49 strikeouts, and he hasn't even walked a batter yet to start the season here in 2021. He's one of the most dominant pitchers in baseball, and if you go to my social media, Twitter, Brian Cain Peak, you're going to hear and see clips from the MLB Network, from ESPN, where, you know, announcers and analysts like John Smoltz, who's a Hall of Fame pitcher, and Pedro Martinez are saying that Corbin's the best pitcher in the game. And if we look at his 2020 and 21 seasons combined, he actually is one of the best pitchers in the game statistically, where he's third in Major League Baseball in a stat called WAR, wins above replacement, just behind Cy Young Award winners Shane Bieber and Jacob deGrom. Now, you could say that the turnaround has been completed, but Corbin would tell you that the turnaround is always under construction, that there is no finish line in the race that he's running. And to go from where he was with a setback in 2019 set him up for a comeback coming back here in 2020 and 2021. And in this podcast, Corbin and I talk about the mental performance skills he works to develop to give him the best chance for success on the mound, including what he uses from the 30-day athletes program, his daily routines on and off the field, how he uses a daily success checklist, why he reads the Daily Stoic and calls Success Hotline, what he learned from reading George St. Pierre's book, The Way of the Fight, how and why he's a reader of Philosopher's Notes, how he uses meditation, mental imagery, and visualization. He talks about the importance of watching positive video of yourself in the mind movie that he's created of his own personal highlights. He talks about using concentration grids, shadow bullpens, why he reads Harvey Dorfman's book, The Mental ABCs of Pitching, and why he reads the chapter on execution 2 times between every start. How he uses the Well Better How process as an evaluation tool after a start, and what his 120 hours look like between starts. He also goes into his pre-inning routine, his pre-batter routine, and his pre-pitch routine, as well as what does he do in the dugout between innings. Corbin talks about his understanding and commitment to process and how that's evolved over his career, and he talks about how he manages the pressure, stress, and expectations that come with being a frontline starter in the major leagues, and what he's learned over the course of his career that he wishes he knew back when he was in high school or when he was in college. So this podcast, whether you're a pitcher, a pitching coach, in baseball or not, whether you're a mental performance coach or just someone who's looking to level up and optimize all aspects of their life, you're going to hear from someone who's one of the very best, if not the very best in the world at what he does while he's doing it, talking about the mental game that mental game skills and tools that he uses to help him get the results he's looking for on the field. Super humbled and excited that Corbin would take time out of his preparation schedule to sit down and talk with us about his mental game and the things that he uses, and super excited for the opportunity to have you here and learn from him. But then also, you have the opportunity to go through a similar program. Just head over to briancain.com/baseball. Check out my free 60-minute masterclass on the mental game of baseball. But then also, if you go to briancain.com/athletes, you can check out my athlete course, this exact course that Corbin went through and continues to go through to help him sharpen his biggest weapon on the mound, his mental game. Let's get right to it. Here's Corbin Burnes, pitcher with the Milwaukee Brewers. Hey, how you doing? Brian Cain, the host of the Brian Cain Mental Performance Mastery podcast, and super excited today to bring to you one of the best pitchers in Major League Baseball, the Milwaukee Brewers, Corbin Burnes. Corbin, thanks for joining us here on the podcast, man.
Yeah, awesome. It's good to get on here and talk. And myself and Brian here have worked here together for almost 2 years now, so it's been a good working relationship and something that we're continuing to grow.
Yeah, and I'm excited to, have you come on and kind of talk about, just some of the things that you do from a mental performance standpoint that I think the high school coaches, high school players, and other, people in baseball that are going to get a chance to listen to this podcast. It's not every day that they get to hear from somebody who's doing it at the highest level. And when we say highest level, right now, Corbin, you are in the middle of a historic run to start the 2021 season. I mean, you set a major league record as a starting pitcher by the record was 36 strikeouts to start a season as a starting pitcher without a walk. You've pushed that number to 49 right now, still with 0 walks. So, you're in the middle of a historic run, and, I think it's exciting to see you go through this run, because I know the amount of work that you've put into this physically, mentally, the whole thing, and how you came back from 2019, which was kind of a struggle for you. So why don't we go back? You obviously burst on the scenes in 2018, 7-0 with a 2.6 ERA, helping the Brewers go all the way to the NLCS championship game, eventually losing to the Dodgers in Game 7. And then 2019, they take you from the bullpen and make you a starter, and it doesn't quite go, as you had planned. So kind of maybe let's go back to 2019 and kind of maybe go back to kind of your introduction to the mental game, and why was that such a pivotal point for you?
Yeah. So like you said, you come out 2018, I was kind of on the ultimate high of highs going into debut, pitching the postseason, being a game away from the World Series. Then, coming into 19, it was like, hey, you're in the rotation, kind of full time, go ahead and go for it. And I just wasn't really prepared. Was able to do it in a short stint out of the bullpen. But when it came to starting, just didn't have the process and the routine put in place to be a starter every 5 days. And so kind of got kicked in the face, bounced up and down between the big leagues and AAA, and also the rotation of the bullpen. So kind of up and down, back and forth the whole year, and just led to, very bad results and, put us in a really bad spot. And got to the point that the Brewers kind of said, hey, let's take you away from the game. Let's send you back to Arizona, get you in the pitching lab, just kind of decompress, get away from the game. And that's when I started working with you, and that's when we first kind of connected and first kind of started to put everything together. And we've kind of built everything since then.
So we kind of came together at a point in your career where we say, like, maybe hitting rock bottom, right? And rock bottom is relative to the individual, but I always say rock bottom is a great place to build a foundation. And, previous to that point in 2019, you played Division I college baseball, you had years of pro baseball experience. What had been your exposure to the mental game up to that point?
Very little. Our coach at St. Mary's, Eric Valenzuela, who's, being, pretty old school coach and pretty hard nosed, was kind of really my only exposure. And it was kind of like, hey, you just got to grind, you got to grit through it. His big thing was having the bulldog mentality, which is kind of like, hey, just suck it up and play kind of thing. And, no one really knew what it was. And so that was kind of really the only exposure I had. And it got me through college baseball and got me through the minor leagues, and it got me through my first partial season in the big leagues. But, to get to where I'm at now was a completely different level. And, a lot of work and routines and processes and stuff that we're all going to talk about here.
Yeah. And, one of the first things that we had to do was start to go through, the 30-day athletes program. And it's kind of an exposure to the system that we try to install around the 10 pillars of mental performance mastery and kind of the skills that you need as a baseball player. And if for the players and the coaches on this call, the mental performance mastery system basically is a set of drills that you do, which Corbin's going to get into the drills that he does to develop the 10 skills that make the skill set of, call it mental toughness or mental performance mastery. And part of the first step for anybody who's listening to this that's interested in getting more into the mental game is to go through that 30-day athletes program. So, Corbin, could you talk about kind of how you use that program? Because I know it's something that you go through but you kind of touch it a lot every day with your notes. Could you kind of explain how you use that program, what benefit it's provided for you?
Yeah. So the first time I was exposed to it was after that 2019 season. It was, I remember going through all the notebook and the videos attached to it and filling out the workbook. And then, so I've actually gone through it now twice. So I did it prior to the 2020 season, and I did it again this off season. And now like I say, it's part of the everyday routine. I have it, the calendar synced up to the phone. So we've got the notes that I've added to some of the notes that you've have from the 30-day program. So it's one of those things that each day that correlates to that day of the month. And after you do your morning readings and your daily routine, it's just one of those things you go and you check your notes for for what day it is on the 30-day master performance program. And, it's something that just gives you a touch up and a reminder of every single day of that month.
So it's kind of the mentality of do a little, a lot, right? And we get better through repetition. So Corbin's gone through the full program. He goes through it in the off season before the season, and then makes notes on his Google Calendar that pop up every day. So on today being May 2nd, day 2 notes would pop up on his calendar. He would look at those notes. On May 15th, he looks at the day 15 notes. So he's created a system in a routine where he doesn't just go through the program once, but he touches the program a little bit every day. And I think that's one of the key things, Corbin, I want to try to get into here are, the importance of your routines and your processes. How important is routine and process to your success as a Major League Baseball pitcher?
I mean, it's everything as far as the profession that we're in. Being a baseball player and more specifically a starting pitcher is hey, you're playing every 5 days. So you have we've generated this this routine over the last year and a half that is becomes second nature. It's a routine. It's something that you do just as well as waking up and brushing your teeth and combing your hair in the morning. That's something I talk about when I talk to everyone. It's like, what is it that you actually do? It's this routine. It's something that you do without even thinking about it. It's something that becomes so part of your daily routine that it's just subconscious. And so that's something that we've developed. And the 30-day master performance program and reading the daily stoic, reading the ABC, some of the things that included in this daily routine, waking up, making your bed, taking the dogs out, feeding the dogs, whatever it may be, just something that makes everything in your life so routine that when you get to the field, it's like, hey, I'm in day 2 of my 5-day preparation. I got to get to the field. I got to bullpen today. I got a lower body workout, get my recovery in, go eat lunch, go out, shag BP, do your conditioning. Then it's, come in, eat dinner before the game, go through the, mind movie, the meditation and whatever else may be in your daily routine. And it's go out and it's, day 2, I'm just I'm a guy in the dugout watching the game that day. So it's something that each day correlates for me. For my weeks are basically five days long. Someone in a different profession, it may be 7 days and maybe 6 days, whatever it be. So mine is 5 days, and that's just kind of how our process has developed, and it's gone over the last 2 years.
So Kirk Cousins is a guy that comes to mind as a quarterback right now for the Minnesota Vikings, where he'd say he breaks his week up into 15-minute blocks. So he knows exactly what he has to do, when he has to do it to prepare for those games, most likely on a Sunday. But for you as a Major League Baseball pitcher, you're going to get the ball every 5 days. So you got 120 hours between starts. And you have a specific process and checklist for each of those 5 days. It says, okay, this is what I have to do and in what order and essentially at what time on each of those days. What has that done for you from like a confidence and a consistency standpoint?
I mean, it makes it huge just knowing that, hey, I feel fully prepared when I come into my start on that 5th day of the week. I'm going in facing the Dodgers. I've done my preparation of, hey, my bullpen, I checked things off on my bullpens. I got all my workouts in. I got my conditioning in. I got my recovery in. My body feels good. I've done my homework the last, 3 days of going through scouting reports and making notes, watching video of the guy, watching previous outings I've had against these guys so that when you go into, day 5 and your start day that morning up, you wake up and you're like, hey, I'm prepared. Go to the field, do my, pre-pitch routine, my pre-day of pitch routine, and go out there. And then it's once you're on the mound, you're not thinking about, hey, what do I got to do this guy? What do I got to do that? How's my arm feel? How's my body feel? It's, hey, this is what I got to do. Okay, fastball down and away. Let's execute the pitch and go out and get after it and attack early on and have fun. So that's kind of what we've narrowed everything down to be able to free myself when we get on the mound, just to go out and just attack.
And I want to kind of dig into some of these skills that you've really we're talking about and kind of developing. And let's start with maybe some of the off the field routines. And you've mentioned like making your bed, walking the dogs, feeding the dogs, why is it important that you have not just a at the field baseball routine and a routine for your 5 days between starts? Why is it important that you set yourself up with a morning routine of like something like making your bed?
By waking up and kicking your day off with checking something off the list, just provides this like waterfall effect as you go down the day. It's like, hey, I've done this, I feel great, I've done everything up to this point in the day, and why all of a sudden am I going to skip something now? It's like, I've done this. Let's just keep rolling down the list, and before you know it, you've gone through your morning routine. You have a productive morning. Now you get to the field and you're like, hey, I feel good. I'm been moving today. I've got everything checked off on the list. Let's do this. Let's get this done. Let's get this done. It just creates this cascade effect. So all of a sudden, it's 7:00, and first pitch is at 7:10. It's like, okay, let's throw the clothes on, let's go out and hopefully get a win today. And it just provides you that next stepping stone to get through each next step throughout the day. And then at the end of the day, you shower, you wash off, you leave the field, you go home. It's eat dinner. It's go through your calm meditation or whatever it may be. Take the dogs out one last time, and it's it's lights out, go to bed, and you start the process again in the morning.
You just mentioned something I think that is so good about like when you're at the field and you shower and you wash it off. And I remember when I was working with Jeff Bannister with the Rangers, one of the things that he would always say is you got to learn how as a baseball player to shower well, meaning at the end of the day, you got to wash it off, because in baseball, you're going to come back and play every day as a pitcher, maybe every 5 days, but it's not like football where you play once a week, you play 162 games a year. So how important is that kind of shutdown routine at the end of the day for you, to when you shower and put your street clothes back on and you leave the ballpark? How important is it for you to leave baseball behind and go back and be a husband and be able to disconnect a little bit from the game?
That's probably one of the biggest things I had to learn from 2019 going into 2020 is 2019. It was struggle. It was a struggle from the very first out of the year to the last out of the year. And it's something that I was taking at home from the field. It was affecting my life at home with my wife, my dogs. So it was one of those things that I really had to learn is, hey, at the end of the day, good or bad, stay at the field as long as you have to clear it. But as soon as you shower and put those street clothes on, hey, it's the day's over. It's time to move on to the next. And that's something that I've did really well with last year. You had a couple of rough outings early on, and obviously it was success after that. But it's even in the days you have good days, you have to go home. At the end of the day, hey, that was a good day. Let's we celebrate with the guys in the clubhouse a little bit, do whatever it needs, whatever you got to do, and then hey, shower, wash it off, street clothes on. It's it's time to go home and be a good husband. And for me, that's allowed me to move on to next outing after next outing, whether it's good or bad. And right now, everything's been going smooth, so it's allowed me to stay in a good process and keep rolling.
Well, I was going to ask is the process different, say in 2019, maybe where you're not getting the results that you're looking for, as to maybe 2021, where, I mean, frankly, you've started this season as one of the best pitchers in Major League Baseball history, and now you're getting a lot more media attention. There's a lot more people pulling at you. There's people asking you to do podcasts like I am, to do this. So you're getting a lot of things pulling at you. But is the process the same for you, where you're kind of using that shower as a way to sort of separate what you do as a baseball player and just who you are as a person every day, looking to try to make the world a better place?
Yeah. I mean, you have to. You hear everyone say, can't have the really high highs and the low lows. Part of having your process of showering and washing it off and putting your street clothes on the end of the day is not getting too high. Not getting way up too high and not knowing what you're doing. All of a sudden, you're like, yeah, I'm in unknown territory of I don't even know what to do now. Like I'm talking to the media, like I'm this and that. It's like, okay, now I don't know what to do. So now it's the same process. You have a good day. You're starting to get up on this high. It's like, hey, shower it off, wash it off. So you're trying to stay as even keel as possible. And, part of that is having to wash it off even after a good day.
It was interesting. I was in Vegas a couple weeks ago and happened to catch you in a game pitching against a Cy Young Award winner, Jake Arrieta, with the Chicago Cubs. It was on a Wednesday. And the announcers during the game were talking about you and some of the work that you had done, to make this great turnaround. And one of the things they mentioned was a success checklist. And could you kind of talk to the people who are listening to this podcast or those who are with us live as we're recording this? What is the success checklist for you, and why is that such an important tool?
Yeah, I mean, the success checklist is basically, very similar to what, the daily checklist throughout the day is. And it's basically allows you to move from one step to the next throughout the day, and provides you what would be your perfect day, your perfect, outlook on the day, what's going to lead to the most success. And for a lot of people, if you have the same routine throughout the day, it's going to provide you the best scenario and circumstance to have, the most success you can have. And, for me, it was what's my AM routine look like? What am I doing when I get to the field? I have this process. It's day 1, it's day 2, it's day 3, it's day 4, it's day 5, whatever day it is in my process of go out, knock out what you got to do that day, go out, and some days it's 2 hours at the field that I have to, lock in and focus and get stuff done. Some days it might be 3. Some days it's, the day before I pitch is, one of the easier days when I get to the field because I don't have a big workout. It's a small little heart rate activity, get the heart rate up, play some light catch, finish the scouting notes for, whatever it may be, look over one more time, and that's kind of it. And then you just go be a baseball fan that day. So depending on the day, it's different hours of varying focus and work. But, you have to know what it takes for you to have that correct process to lead to, the maximum success you can have.
It's interesting I know on your success checklist, some of the things that you've already mentioned earlier in the podcast. And I go back to a conversation I had with Sean Casey, who's an analyst for the MLB Network, 11-year major leaguer, a lifetime hitter over 300. And one of the things that he said is from the day he turned 18 years old until the end of his baseball career, he read a page of Harvey Dorfman's book, The Mental Game of Baseball, every day. And, I like to share with our listeners that leaders are readers. And, a lot of times I think athletes maybe don't get as much into reading as they could or should, but I know it's something that you do consistently. And, on the success checklist, one of the things that you do is you read a chapter or a letter, I should say, of Harvey Dorfman's book, The Mental ABCs of Pitching. How do you use that book, and what have you found it to be beneficial?
Yeah, I mean, so, my daily routine is reading, one chapter, one letter, whatever it may be, of the Mental Game of Baseball, and also the Daily Stoic. And so for me, it's, when you're getting up and you're making breakfast in the morning, or you're sitting on the toilet, whatever it may be, you've got time. You've got plenty of time in the morning to take the time of 5 to 10 minutes and read those things. And so for me, I use it. It's something I think I'm on maybe the 3rd or 4th time of going through this, the Mental Game of Baseball. And just one of those things, it's each letter's a, reminder of, hey, adversity, or, whatever. I think I just started over for maybe the 4th time. So I just read the adversity chapter maybe yesterday. So it just gives you an insight of something that, hey, maybe you haven't come across much adversity lately. This is how you should do it. And all of it leads to the 10 pillars that we've discussed, and every chapter has some sort of tie to it. So it just gives you this constant reminder of, hey, yeah, I need to make sure that, I get to the field today and do my, get my mental work in, get my physical work in, and then, can enjoy the game that day. But the whole process of reading, like the Daily Stoic, is another thing that I'm sure you're going to mention, but it's like, it's philosophers and guys from hundreds and hundreds of years ago that were doing the same type of thing. And so it just gives you the insight of, hey, these guys lived 250 years ago, but they were going through the same process or going through the same mindset. So it's something that just, it gives you the daily reminder of what you got to do that day, and brings you back to what we've started and what we're continuing to do.
So reading the Daily Stoic every day, reads the Mental ABCs of Pitching by Harvey Dorfman daily as well. And, Corb, is one of the chapters that we kind of connected on, I think, back in the 2019 and 2020 offseason, when you started going through some of these processes and making them a part of what you did every day. Was, I remember talking about the chapter on execution, and how clearly Harvey Dorfman in that book, ABCs of Pitching, talks about just your only goal as a pitcher is to execute this one pitch, and that's it. And every pitch has a life and history of its own. So I think for the pitchers listening to this, or the pitching coaches listening to this, if you just get the book, The Mental ABCs of Pitching, and you just read the execution chapter on a weekly basis, that alone is going to provide you with a completely different perspective than 99% of the pitchers out there have. What were some of the big takeaways for you from that chapter on execution?
Yeah, so the execution chapter is something that over the course of my 5 days, I'll read it twice. So I'll read it the bullpen day and the start day, along with another chapter for that given day. And basically, the biggest takeaway I have from that section every time I read it is how to evaluate your performance that day. Obviously, if you go out and throw 6 innings and give up 1 run and punch out 12, it looks great on paper. But how did you do executing that day? Were you lucky? Were you out there, guys, fouling balls off that were right down the middle? So for me, part of that execution chapter is the next morning when I go and review the film for that day. Is you can see I see every single pitch that I've thrown, and you just mark a tally. So I know that I threw, let's say, 92 pitches the day before. I'm counting every mistake that I made. Basically, every pitch that wasn't within maybe an inch of the spot where we were trying to throw it, counts as a non-executed pitch. And so for me, I count every non-executed pitch, subtract it from the total. And that's how I have my total execution pitches of the total pitches that day, and it spits out a percentage at me. So like for say my first 4 outings this year were like 79, 80% execution. And my 5th one dropped down to like 73 or 74%. So basically it just gives you this idea of, hey, how am I executing pitches? Based off my 4 starts, my goal for the year is to be about 79, 80% execution on every outing. So that kind of gives me a gauge of how, how we performance-wise, how we did that day.
Well, I think the key thing that you're saying, and I want to make sure our listeners get here, is that you're not looking at the 49 strikeouts and the no walks, or the sub 0.5 or sub 1 ERA as your measurement of success. You're looking at how many times did I throw the pitch that I was trying to throw where I wanted to throw it, because that is all you can control. Can you kind of unpack for us, Corbs, about controlling the things that you can control? And as a pitcher, you can't control ERA. You can't frankly even control if you're getting all these strikeouts that you're getting, right? All you can control is the execution of the pitch. Could you kind of unpack that in your words about the importance of just controlling what you can control and the commitment to the execution of the one pitch?
Yeah. So as a starting pitcher, the things you can control are your preparation for the week, your effort that you're going to give that day, your effort level. And then once you get on the mound, it's, your pre-pitch routine, your pre-batter routine. Basically, you can control everything up when the ball is in your hand. As soon as the ball leaves your hand, everything's out of your control. I go back to my last outing. The first hitter hit a ground ball to second base that took a bad hop and went over his head for a single. Like immediately from the very first hitter, we were being tested of, hey, that should have been a ground ball out. It went for a hit. What are you going to do about it? You're going to get upset. You're going to throw a fit like, freaking field just gave up a single, and I got a guy on first, probably the fastest guy in the league. It's like, no, you got to bear down. That's out of your control. Go back and execute some pitches, and we got out of it without the run scoring. But things that you can't control are, where guys hit the ball. Where's your defense playing behind you? Are you in a shift and you make a good pitch and you hit the dribbler, 12 hoppers through the infield the other way? That's like, probably should have been ground ball, but hey, your defense is shifted to try to match scouting reports. So that's out of your control. An umpire makes a bad strike call. The umpire in the field makes a bad out call. Just there's certain things throughout the day that are going to be completely out of your control, and you have to realize that the focus for you, no matter what happens, is executing pitches. The only way that you can get out of that inning that you're in, or the shitty situation you may be in, is for you to execute pitches. And trying to complain that this and that may have led to a bigger inning or led to a bigger line is just something that's not in your control. And the only thing you got to go back and focus on is how did I do execution percentage that day? And that's basically all you got to go off of.
And Corbin, you've mentioned a lot of things, I think, on the success checklist. Like you've mentioned reading the mental ABCs of pitching. You've mentioned going through your 120-hour kind of routine between starts. You've mentioned reading the daily stoic. A couple other things that I think that you've mentioned that I want you maybe to unpack a little bit more in terms of how you use it and the benefit you've gotten from them. Something like Success Hotline. How have you used that in calling in every day to listen to Dr. Rob Gilbert for 3 minutes?
Yeah, so my drive to the field every day is about 5 minutes, and so most of my drive that I'm heading to the field is listen to the Success Hotline. And it's something it's on the favorites on my phone or saved on the favorite of my, my Bluetooth in the truck. Because as soon as you get in the car, hit the call button, listen to the Success Hotline as you're driving the field. And, then you got maybe time for, one little song to pump you up before you can get into the field that day. But, Dr. Rob Gilbert just gives you different life stories every day, just different mental things to think about every day. And it's something that you may not even know it, that you're going through this, mental performance program. And all of a sudden, he talks about something that you just, talked about 2 days prior. So it's something that is, giving you constant reminders and giving you just this constant feedback of, somewhere where you can think and somewhere where you can improve on for that day or that week or month, whatever it may be.
Another thing that you've done a lot in the car, when you have that time where you're driving or when you guys are traveling from city to city is philosopher's notes in the Optimize app and going through some of those, those books on mindset or those books on kind of mental performance in 20-minute Cliff Note versions. So how have you used that app, and what are some of the benefits that you found from that, or maybe some of the favorite books you've gone through?
Yeah, so that's really cool because it gives you kind of some insight and some background on some other guys that either Brian you've worked with or some other guys have gone into some mental programs. And I think the one that sticks out for me the most is the book by GSP. So basically they break it down, and they maybe a 300-page book that they basically summarize and do the big points in 15-20 minutes. And I think the coolest one was GSP. I think he talks about when he lost, and that's when he started working with you, and just kind of the mental brick he said he was carrying. And this is when he started to learn about his red, yellow, and green lights. And I think that's probably the toughest thing to learn as a pitcher is knowing and realizing when you hit a yellow light, green light, whatever it may be. Obviously, when you're going good and everything's rolling and you're having good numbers and good success, you're in the green. But as soon as someone happens that you start to give a couple runs or something, string 2 to 3 hits together, go 3-0 on a hitter, that's when you got to realize, hey, things are kind of out of my control, and that's why I need to go through my routine to get everything locked back in. So I think that was probably one of my more favorite ones from the philosopher note is GSP, learning about his signalings.
Yeah, and George St. Pierre's book, The Way of the Fight, in the Optimize app, as are some other great books, that athletes get exposed to, like Michael Phelps in his book No Limits, or Conor McGregor in his book Win or Learn. And one of the things also that you've talked about, Corbin, is the Calm meditation. And the Calm is an app, and meditation is basically the skill that you're using to help kind of just learn to get more present, to quiet your mind. To be able to refocus when you get distracted. When do you do your meditation? How do you do your meditation? And what does that kind of look like for you?
Yeah. So the calm meditation that you talked about is something that I do as I'm falling asleep at night. That's kind of like the last thing to check off my success list of the day is, we're just finished watching TV on the couch. We're heading to bed. Phones are away. It's like, reach over and turn on, Tamara Levitt over there and see what she's got to talk, see what she's got for the day. And it's, some days if I forget, my wife's like, we going to listen to Tamara tonight? Like, what's going on? So she's my accountability partner when it comes to listening to the calm meditation. And then the other pieces of the meditation are the mind movie. And then I'm blanking on what you like to call the
mental imagery.
Mental imagery. That's right. I for some reason I call it meditation, but the mental imagery. And so those are more meditation and stuff that I do throughout the day to, prepare for the outing or the day before, to help kind of visualize some stuff. And, mental imagery is a lot different than the calm meditation. The calm meditation takes through a lot of breathing exercises, kind of totally relax and decompress for the day, versus the mental imagery that Cain has recorded for me goes into more mental recollection of success of the past, body scan, a body check, showing that you can control the different levels of relaxation and intensity. And then, right before I go up for the game, I listen to this. And so it takes you through, basically visualizing each one of your pitches for that day. It's like, hey, visualize the cutter, visualize the sinker, curveball, changeup, slider, whatever it may be. It just gives you these last few mental, visual reps before, I head out and start playing catch for the day.
And you've mentioned a couple of times a mind movie, and I know, Zach Sorensen, who's a mental performance coach with the Atlanta Braves. One of the things he talked about when he was playing in the big leagues was going in to watch Manny Ramirez when he was a teammate of his, I think, with the Indians. And Manny Ramirez would go in and he'd watch video before a game. And Zach, being a learner, wanted to follow and kind of pick the brain of some of these best players, in the big leagues. And he's like, Manny, hey, I know you spend a lot of time watching film. And this was kind of before I think a lot of guys watched film, and film was so prevalent as it is today. And he goes in to watch Manny, and Manny puts these big headphones on, and he's listening to his reggae pump up music, and he's watching double, missile, home run, seed, and Zach follows him in the locker room, and he goes, hey, I knew I wasn't going to ask any questions about how or why you watched video, but you didn't look at any of your strikeouts from yesterday. You didn't look at the ball you rolled over to the shortstop with a runner in scoring position. You just watched your highlights. Why? And Manny Ramirez's message to Zach was, he's like, who's more prepared to play? Why would I want to watch the strikeout or the rollover? I want to watch all the hard contact that I've had over the last, couple months of my career. So with a mind movie, Corbin, what exactly is that, and how do you use that?
Yeah, so my mind movie is about 10 minutes long. And I usually do it maybe as I'm getting on the, loose on the bike that day, or stretching out on the roller or whatever on the ground. And basically it's got highlights from 2018. There's even highlights from 2019, last year. And then I've got some ready to upload for this year. It's basically punch outs, big outs maybe, and, the postseason from 2018, good locations of pitches that we're trying to throw for that day. So even if a guy takes it for, maybe it was for a ball or takes it for a strike, it was like, that's like the ideal placement that we want for a sinker, ideal placement for a cutter. Some ugly swings and misses, just whatever it may be, to give you that mental recollection of, hey, yeah, that's the feeling I want. That's the, the shape I want of this pitch. And so it just provides you that right mindset. So as soon as you go out and you start playing catch, like, okay, first pitch, cutter, like, okay, I've seen it already today. I've seen it every other day that I've watched the mind movie. So I know, hey, I know the feeling of it. I know what I got to do. Now just go out and execute this cutter down and away and just let it happen. So, for me, it's more of, visualizing that exact location of the pitch I want, the ugly swings and misses, whatever it may be. It just gives you that perfect mindset of, hey, that's what I want to do. Now I've seen it. Let's go do it.
And the more you see the positive video of you pitching the way you want to and performing well, the more more confidence you get, the more prepared you have, and the more likely you are to be able to execute that, I think, when you get out there. And if we go back to 2019, during the struggle, I don't think, did you have a mind movie that you were watching consistently back in 2019, or is that something that you started after that? Is that right?
Yeah, that's something that I think we started putting together that off season of 2019 prior to 2020.
And I think what happens for a lot of players, and for the players listening to this that are going, well, yeah, but Corbin's in the big leagues. He's got every pitch he throws. There's 7 different camera angles. It's easy to make a highlight video, But when you're coming up, even if you're a youth baseball player and you don't have a lot of footage of yourself, well, find the guys who you want to be like in the big leagues. Maybe it's Corbin Burnes, and you go get footage of him and you watch him execute those pitches every day, and your brain will interpret that as if you're doing it, right? I mean, that's the cool part about visualization, is the brain isn't really good at determining what's real and what's vividly imagined. That's why sometimes we wake up from having a dream or whatever, and we have a physiological response. Our body is freaking out. Our heart rate is elevated. When there's nothing there, we just had a dream. So I remember when I was with Team USA in 2013, Tyler Beatty, who's a pitcher with the Giants organization now, he every day would watch highlight video of Pedro Martinez because he wanted to be able to see the way he was throwing his two-seamer, the way that he was executing some pitches. So I think for the listeners, getting a highlight video, call it a mind movie, right? Because it's kind of like you're watching highlights of yourself, whether that be of you, whether that be of a pitcher who you want to model your game after, can be massively important. I think another thing that's really important in terms of locking in the focus and the concentration, and it's something that Harvey Dorfman used to do with a lot of guys he worked with, including Roy Halladay, who was a Cy Young Award winner, multiple times, was a concentration grid, and helping you learn to kind of lock in your focus and be more able at going number to number or pitch to pitch. How do you use concentration grids, Corbs?
Yeah, so the concentration grids are part of, not necessarily the morning routine, but the routine when I get to the field for the day. It's one of really the first things that I do when I get there. I change, I eat. And as I'm sitting down after eating, let my food digest for a little bit, I'll go through concentration grid. Maybe it's looking at some video, but the concentration grids. Originally, when I started doing them, we were doing 0 to 100. So it might take a couple minutes to get through it. And then this year we transitioned to doing just the 5x5 grid. So basically it's 0 to 25, and because those take about 13, 14, 15 seconds to get through, which might be how long you need to focus for from you're getting your sign, coming set, taking a breath, and rolling. So that's kind of we adjusted to a little bit more realistic focus time for myself, and so I go through maybe 6 or 7 of those 5x5 concentration grids that take anywhere from 12 to 15, 16 seconds.
And using the concentration grids, right, to try to mirror the amount of focus that you're going to have to bring to a pitch.
Right.
So the time you step on the rubber, get the sign, come set, deliver the pitch, let's call it 15 seconds. You want a grid that's going to match the stress that you have to be under, or the stimulus you have to be under for that focus, where, if you're a UFC fighter, you got to fight a 5-minute round. So we're going to do a 10x10 to try to get you to focus for that 5 minutes at a really intent level. And for anybody, the listeners that want to go into concentration grids, if you go to briancain.com/cgrid, cgrid is in concentration grid. You can access the grids there, and you can do a 5x5 like Corbin, or you can challenge yourself with a 10x10, or find the grid that you feel like is going to work for you. There's a video, there's an article there that kind of explains them, but it's just how Corbin explained how he uses them as almost a warm up for his mind. What about shadow bullpens, Corbin? So we've talked a lot about that on the podcast previously, and the importance of that in terms of practicing the body language, the focus, the visualization, the breath. How do you use shadow bullpens as part of your 5-day routine, and what benefit have they made for you?
Yeah, so in my 5-day plan, I go through a shadow bullpen usually 3 times. It's usually the day after, and then day 2 is my actual bullpen day, so I don't do a shadow with a normal. And then day 3 and day 4 will be also shadow bullpen days. And for me, I've gotten a really good routine with it. That when I get to the field, I go through all my my prep routine, watch doing the concentration grids, the mind movie, get loose in the weight room, go through a lift, then go out on the field. I play catch, I go through my conditioning, and then I go straight out to the bullpen. And when I go out to the bullpen is when I do my shadow bullpen. So when other guys are finishing their catch play, I'm out on the mound going through my reps. And so right now I'll shadow 1 inning. So I'll get up there, and before I shadow my bullpen, I'll go through some dry reps of some mechanical cues that I go through that without a ball. So I'll do those, and then basically those are kind of like the warm up pitches for the shadow, for that shadowing that inning is going through my dry reps. Then it's then it's going right into my my pre-inning and pre-batter routine of getting the ball back from the third baseman, and I'm hitting the cleat cleaner. Hit my focus with the breath, my visual and my breath on the wire. Then it's your visual cue, and it's on the mound, and I'm shadowing innings. So usually my first hitter, I'll go against a right-hander, and it's a 3-pitch punch out. Then it's do the walk around the mound, go back through the the pre-batter, the cleat cleaner, the wire, the verbal back on the bump, and then I'll maybe like a 4-pitch punch out to a lefty. Again, I'm mixing all my pitches, mixing up, sequencing the way that I would sequence, again, walking around the rubber. And then, go through my cleat cleaner, my visual, my verbal. And then, I'm going to get into a yellow light, whether it's, it's a first pitch, it's a one or first pitch ball and then a single, or it's 1-0, 2-0, some sort of, stressful situation that I'll go through my reset, my yellow light reset of, hey, go through the cleat cleaner, go through your visual, go through your verbal, get back on the mound, and then I'll finish up the inning, and then that'll be it for the day. So it's 1 inning. It takes 5-10 minutes. It's something that kind of caps off my time on the field for that day.
I think the biggest takeaway for the pitchers, the pitching coaches listening to this is, Corbin just outlined what he works on when he does his shadow bullpen. And he mentioned he executes his pre-inning routine. He executes his pre-batter routine. He executes his pre-pitch routine. He's got a red and yellow light release that he comes to. I mean, Corbs, the way you just kind of ran through what you do with a shadow bullpen, I think for our listeners, maybe who are new to shadow bullpens, how long has it taken you to get into that routine and that rhythm where you feel like the shadow now, you know exactly what you're doing, why you're doing it, and it's become beneficial for you? Was it like that right out of the chute, or did it take you a little time to kind of get used to it and understand what you were doing and why?
I'd say it probably took 2 to 3 months over the off season of 19 into 20. That's kind of when we established it. And then, it's something that we're always tweaking, as we go and adding other routines like between innings and the dugout routines, that kind of stuff. So that's something that we're always adding to and making tweaks to, depending on how things are going and how things flow with the game.
So if you're taking notes here, right, let's go through some of the routines that Corbin has. Is his pre-inning routine. And the pre-inning routine is going to be basically from the time he comes out of the dugout, crosses the line, gets the ball, manicures the mound, throws his warm-up pitches, and then the ball gets thrown to second and he gets the ball back from third base. That's all pre-inning routine. Corbin, question, in the pre-inning routine, do you throw the same sequence of 6 to 8 pitches every time, or does that change based off of kind of how you feel or what's working for you that day?
I do the same sequence every single time. So when I get up on the mound, it's 2 sinkers, glove side, sinker, arm side with a changeup, and then it's cutter, sinker, and then we're throwing the ball down. So I don't throw very many pitches. It's just enough to kind of lock back in, get the arm moving, and then it's right back to business. So
then you get the ball back. Imagine this right as a pitcher. So the ball gets thrown to second. You get the ball back from third base. You're probably on that third base side of the mound. You walk back behind the mound. And if you get a chance to watch Corbin, which after listening to this, I hope you do, because this is a clinic in the mental game of pitching. All right. So when you see him looking at those, standing behind the rubber by the cleat cleaner, which is on the back of the mound, looking at the wire above home plate, and you're taking that deep breath, Corbs, with that focal point of the wire, what does that deep breath do for you as part of that pre-batter routine on the back of the mound before you get up on the rubber and enter that pre-pitch routine? What does that do for you back there, looking at that focal point of the wire and the deep breath?
Yeah, that deep breath on the focal point brings you basically into like the here and the now. It's like, where my feet are at, as I'm taking this deep breath, it's, feeling the spikes in the dirt, knowing that, hey, it's, we're in the present. We can't be in the last inning that you may have just given up a homer, or you just punched out the side. We're not looking to, hey, what's my line going to be? Can I get through 6? Can I get through 7? What's my pitch count? The breath is right here. We're right now. It's after you get your visual, it's your verbal, whatever it may be, and it's on the mound. It's attack mode.
So you take that breath on the wire, and for the pitchers watching Corbin, or if you're watching Corbin pitch, okay, you're going to see big body language, breath on the wire. The wire he's looking at the top of the backstop is a focal point, like he said, that says, okay, I am where my feet are. I'm ready for this confrontation in this at bat. He'll walk up and get on the rubber. And when you're on the rubber, now you're only throwing out of the stretch. Is that right?
Yep.
So if you watch him, he's only throwing out of the stretch. And is there a time where, like, when you come set with your hands, is that when you're taking your last breath? How do you use the deep breath once your foot hits the rubber within that pre-pitch routine?
Usually as soon as I take the deep breath and I step on the rubber, and then I'm taking a breath, and then I get the sign. And then as I'm coming set again is another breath that we're getting. For me, the more important breath is the one obviously on the focal point to kind of focus on where we're at, but then also take one in between pitches, not going into a yellow or red. It's as I'm getting the ball back, I'm getting back on the rubbers when I take my next deep breath.
And you've mentioned a lot about signal lights. So like with red, yellow lights, what are signal lights for you, Corbin? And what's the difference between, say, a green light, a yellow light, and a red light for you?
So green is everything's going good. Attacking the zone, you're executing pitches, you're hitting the spots you want, you're getting, whether it's weak contact, punch outs, whatever it may be, things are rolling. That's the green light. And then I group my yellow and red together. I don't like to say, hey, I'm in a yellow light, let's try to keep rolling. Then boom, we're in the red. For me, it's as soon as I don't like what's going on, I try to go first pitch curveball and miss, try to throw second pitch curveball and miss. Hey, let's go back. Let's take a deep breath. We just missed 2 spots in a row. Let's get back, get off the rubber, wipe it clean, take the deep breath, the verbal to, attack. And then we're back on there. So for me, the yellow red have kind of combined into one, and it comes after, or if it's, one really, really bad pitch, you're like, okay, well, where are we at? Where's our head at? Let's get off and let's get back after it. Otherwise, it's usually after 2 balls in a row. After every time a runner gets on, whether it's a hit, a walk, whatever it may be, I always go right into a yellow red, which for me, it's almost become part of the, the pre-batter routine is just going right through a signal light and getting to it and just, wiping what was ever happened, cleaning, and getting back to it.
Like it. So you're if you catch yourself outside of green and red and yellow, we talk about the 3 steps to a release: a physical action, a deep breath to release, and a verbal trigger. So you're going for your release to the cleat cleaner, kind of, taking a deep breath as you're wiping that away, moving your spike, symbolic of, okay, I'm wiping away that last pitch, cleaning my cleats, taking a deep breath, and saying to yourself, all right, let's go attack the next pitch. And we've went through, I don't remember if it was this off season or 19 to 20. I think it might've been 20 to 21. We went through Bob Tewksbury, his book, 90% Mental. Tewks being a mental performance coach with, different organizations in the big leagues. He's been with the Cubs, he's been with the Giants, with the Red Sox. And in that book, Tewks, who pitched in a Major League All-Star game, I think finished second for Cy Young one year, talked about how he would try to say the pitch he was trying to throw, like as he was coming set, before he would deliver to the plate. And one of our questions that came in here from Tom is, he said, is there any verbals that Corbin uses, like a final thought based off of a pitch he's trying to throw or a location? Does he have that kind of predetermined self-talk as part of his pre-pitch routine?
Yeah. So when I initially started actually working with Brian and putting our routines together, so this was prior to 2020, and for most of 2020, I used this as I got the sign and as I was coming set, I was saying, verbally saying, fastball down and away, fastball down and away, just to keep my mind locked in of what I was doing. I think more than anything, that was to prevent me from the time I got signed to coming set was, prevent the mind from going somewhere, is continually saying it so that we're, staying locked in. Now I've got to the point that I know that, hey, when I get this fastball down and away, I'm visualizing, okay, this fastball down and away. Like I no longer have to say it verbally. It's in my head. Hey, fastball down and away, fastball down and away. So it's something that I've grown that I don't need to say it verbally, but it's still being said, mentally inside my head.
And when you're saying I'm seeing that fastball down and away, like, are you seeing almost like on Pitch Tracker, like you'd see if we were watching TV and you're seeing kind of the tunnel of that pitch down and away? What exactly are you seeing when you're visualizing that pitch?
Yeah, no, it's a combination of seeing, visually, but also seeing it in the past. I've every pitch that I throw now, I've already thrown. Whether it's I've seen it in a mind movie or visually, I've seen it in prep work, whatever it may be. It's something I've already seen and done before, so it's already ingrained in my head. There's no pitch that I've thrown this year that I haven't thrown in the past. So that's something I'm able to recall and go back to.
Love it. Corbin, one of the things that I know you do too, talking about kind of having a routine and having a routine and a process for everything is, let's say you go out, you punch out the side in the first inning, now you're sitting in the dugout. What's that routine in between innings look like for you?
Yeah, so this is actually something that we discussed recently, because it came up that, a couple of my starts early on that, we've cruised through 4 innings, we've cruised through 5. I'm starting to visually, look ahead, like, hey, what's my line going to look like at the end of the game as I'm sitting in the dugout? So it's like, do I need to stay locked in from pitch 1 to pitch 100, even when I'm not on the mound, or what do we got to do? So that's something that we actually recently discussed, and I've gotten to the point now that as soon as I come off the field, the pitching coach is going to come over, catcher is going to come over. We're going to talk about that half inning, maybe a sequence, maybe one pitch, whatever it may be. And as soon as that meeting is over, gloves down, hat comes off. So when the hat comes off is when you can kind of go ahead and, just let your mind roam, let it be free, whatever's going on. And then every time a new hitter comes to the plate, whether it's an out made hit, whatever, I go through a 6-2-8 breath, kind of a quick, recheck, refocus, hey, where are we at, what we got to do. And then you can go ahead and let your mind, go free a little bit. But once we got 2 outs, after that last 6-2-8 breath, when the hat goes back on is when we got to stay locked in. So 2 outs, the hat goes back on. Now we're looking, hey, who are our next 3 hitters for the inning? What do we want to do? First pitch, how do we want to attack, that kind of thing. So that's something that we developed in the last couple of weeks of what to do between innings so that we're not, continually trying to stay focused and locked in for 2 hours of a game.
Yeah, it kind of gives you that ability to kind of come in and come out, which, is something that I think we've talked about on the golf course, and on the golf course, it's like you come into the hourglass and you get ready and you hit a shot and you hit a shot a mile. And then you come out of the hourglass, you drive to the ball and you repeat that process. Corbin, before we go into some questions from the people who have joined us live here in this recording, how do you use golf as kind of a training ground for your mental aspects of pitching?
Yes, I mean, golf is something obviously that I love to play. I love to go have fun, but it just provides you another avenue to work on some of the mental stuff that. I mean, my golf routine of stepping up to a golf ball changes probably every about 4 or 5 holes, depending on how I'm playing. But it just kind of gives you this idea, this thought of, hey, what if there's this constant routine? It just kind of gives you brief, 4 or 5 shots in a row that, hey, let's try this. And it kind of gives you this empty template to kind of try some things out and some focus techniques, breathing stuff, whatever it may be. So, while you're out there having fun. Or I also like to fish. So, as you're sitting there waiting for a fish, you're kind of thinking, pondering stuff like, hey, what if we tried this? What if we tried that? So just gives you some other avenues to kind of have some fun and try some other things out that you may, probably wouldn't want to do while you're in the 6th inning of a 0-0 ball game or something.
Yeah. And I think that's what's cool about, as an athlete, when you can play different sports, or when you can use golf or use ping pong or billiards or fishing as a way to work on things and try different things that maybe will translate into your pitching. But because every time you're pitching, it's so important, it may not be the right platform necessarily to work on it in that moment, but if you use it part of your golf game, or if you're shooting free throws, if you're a high school player who's also playing basketball, well, the breath that you take before a free throw is probably going to be the same type of breath that would help you before you throw a pitch, and Corbin, speaking about, high school baseball, we got some high school players and coaches and mental performance coaches that have joined us here live for this recording. And one of the questions comes in from Jack Wilson. And he said, Corbin, you've talked a lot about habits and routines. Which habits and routines do you think would be most beneficial for a high school student athlete to start and develop?
Best routine to get, I would say, planning out your day. Obviously 2/3 of your day is going to be planned out with your class schedule. So I would suggest having a routine when you wake up in the morning. Whether you're a guy that you wake up, you shower, you eat breakfast, whatever it is, make a consistent routine in the morning. Because it, not only will it help you in your sport, it's probably going to help you in class and school along the way, just to feel more prepared. And then, as soon as the last bell rings for the school to end, how much time do you have before you go to practice? Can you make use of that time? Whether it's some reading, some the mind movie, the meditation, whatever it may be. What can you make use of your hour before practice starts, and then when you're at practice, making sure everything's productive, getting done what needs to be done for the day. And when you go home, it's having a well, better, how checklist for the day, or a schedule of, getting homework done and, eating dinner, carving out 30 minutes to play video games, whatever it may be, just scheduling out your day, just so that, when your head hits the pillow at night, you feel like you're productive and got everything done.
Love it. And a question comes from Zach. He says, Corbin, do you pay attention to who you are facing and pitch, quote unquote, more carefully, or is it just about your strengths and your routine?
Most of it is the strengths of my routine. Over the last 1.5 to 2 years, I've been able to really define and know who I am as a pitcher. It's allowed me to. So now when I dissect a lineup, I can throw almost everyone into 2 categories, being right-handed and left-handed. That's really it. I have my attack plans for righties and my attack plans for lefties, and I've got probably 2 or 3 sequences I go to for a righty, 2 or 3 for a lefty. And basically, when I'm looking through a scouting report, looking at these guys, let's say there's 5 lefties in a lineup. So I go to this lefty. Will this attack work? Yep. This. Yep. Basically, if there's one lefty in a lineup that, like, hey, the 2 or the 3 sequences that you normally do against lefties are going to play into this guy. Well, then we might put a mental note like, hey, this guy we might have to get a little creative with. Righties, the other 4 righties in the lineup, no, we can put them in the bucket of the generic right-handed way that we attack, and we go after it. And so now we know that day I have 3 different attack plans. I got a righty, a lefty, and the one special lefty that we need to look out for. So basically, it eliminates trying to think about 9 different ways to get hitters out. Now it's basically 2 to 3.
Brandon had a question. He said, Corbin, what is it you do when you're behind in the count, or if you're having a bad outing, call it a red, yellow, light outing, to refocus? And I know you had mentioned kind of going to the cleat cleaner and hitting your release, but is there anything that you say to yourself, or something that you go to help you turn it around when maybe the outing's not going how you want it to?
Yeah, I mean, you're going to have those days where, I mean, I just had one the other day. They string together 5 hits. They're finding holes that you can't do anything about. It's really easy to get frustrated and try to start blaming on this and blaming on that. And basically, you have to go back to what you do best. Maybe the first 2 or 3 innings, you've kind of gotten away from something that you do really good because maybe your changeup's not working that day, or this team's really good at hitting sliders, but you've gone away from it because you don't want to get lit up. So that's something you got to know. You really have to know what you do best and know a way to get back to that. Even if, hey, things aren't going well, but this is a good slider hitting team. Hey, things already aren't going well. So you got to go back to who you are and what you do best. And red, yellow lights will help get you back to that, but also knowing what you do best is probably, something that you should be able to stick to and get through out of some tough times.
Yeah. I think knowing yourself as a pitcher and going back to saying, hey, these are my strengths. And if my strengths happen to be what your strengths are as a hitter, let's get after this thing and find out who's better on this pitch on this day, and 2 more questions that came in here, Corbin. One of them was, if you could go back and teach your younger self one concept of mental performance, what would it be?
What would it be? I think it would just be, controlling the things you can control, the controllables. I think there's so many times I think back to high school and college, getting frustrated and getting upset because umpires missing calls, or, there's an error made behind you, or balls are just dropping in. I think the part is, the biggest thing and biggest part of growing up is controlling the things you can control and knowing what the controllables are and knowing what the uncontrollables are.
Awesome. And our last question here comes in from Gary Tiger, who's a mental performance coach out of Connecticut. And he says, Corbin, now that you've gone through the 30-day athletes course and you've got all these solid routines and process in place, what's the benefit of continuing to work with a mental performance coach like Brian Cain once you have all these things established?
Yeah. So now, I've been working with Brian since, it was, I think, September of 19, is when we first started working together. And, it's all, you always think, hey, what point are you going to hit the end? Are you ever going to hit the end? But there's new things you learn every day. And the thing with being in a game of baseball is there's things that happen every day that you still have never seen before in the game. It's something that you have to constantly learn from. And Brian has the knowledge from, he worked with Arrieta when he won his Cy Young. So he's gone through years of a guy being at, the top of the game. And so if I want to be at the top of the game, I need to continue to not only work with Brian, but to work on, my mental side of the game. So I think, it's very easy after 2020, it could have been, hey, yeah, that was good. Thanks for working with me for a year, and I've got everything put in place and we're just going to move on. But for me, it was, I can always, get better at certain aspects of the game. Maybe I get to the point where my, pitching routines, my signal lights, things just aren't clicking the same as they used to. So we had to go back to the well of, hey, okay, let's try this. So it's always a game of, when things don't go well, okay, we have these things to try. And, having the experience of Brian working with, other sports and other athletes, that they've all have, there's probably hundreds and thousands of different routines and different things that they can go to that, he knows of, he's got notes of. And so if something stopped working for me, that I immediately have a new routine that I can try and go to.
And I think it's also, my answer to that would hopefully be that it's a process, right? And it's constantly evolving. And as you go, you're in a way different place than you were in 2019. Now there comes, different stress, right? In 2019, the stress is, man, I got to get this thing going. And now the stress in 2021 is, man, I'm John Smoltz and Pedro Martinez and these guys on the MLB Network said that they were looking at me as the best pitcher in baseball. Well, that's a compliment. At the same token, that creates added pressure, can create added stress, it can create added adversity, and I think, Corbin, my last question for you is, obviously, if people watch the interviews of you, and I try to take any time there's an interview and I put it on my Twitter at Brian Cain Peak, just because I think the way that you handle the success and the way that you handled 2019 and the humility and your ability to make things sound so simple. I'm just out there trying to execute a pitch and I'm trying to get to my next day, my routine. Like, you obviously have some tools that are working for you. And I think sharing those tools, man. I want to thank you, one, for coming on the podcast and talking about what you're doing, because it's not every day you get somebody who's performing at the highest level in the world that will come on and talk openly about the things that they do to help them to prepare, so I want to commend you and thank you for doing that. But I think, what if there was one thing that you'd say, okay, this is how I handle success. This is the message that I want to send to people about whether it's, the low of the low or the high of the high. This is the last message I want to share with people. If I could remove the skull cap and plant a seed inside of their brain, pitcher, pitching coach, parent, whatever, this is the one message that Corbin Burnes would want to leave them with.
Yeah. I mean, everyone likes to ask, talk about the streak I've got going, and, no one wants to talk to you when you're that guy that's got the streak the other way around. You're not punching anyone out. Now you're walking everyone. No one wants to talk to you when you're that guy, but everyone wants to talk to you when you're the guy on top. So for me, it's approaching everything the same way, whether you're your highest high or your lowest low. And for me, that's led to this process and this routine of, hey, as soon as something good or bad happens, we flush it and we move on to the next. It's very easy to stay upset when, hey, I gave up 10 hits yesterday and now I got to go watch the film after the game and count execution. I mean, I executed like 5 pitches. It's very easy just to let yesterday drag into today and drag into tomorrow in your bullpen and be like, oh, look, I'm doing the same thing over again. It's very easy to, have that the pity yourself and woe is me, and, things will just never come to the end. At some point, you have to have that barrier, that break of, hey, doing this over and over again is not going to work. You have to have something to stop it and start over and get on a good run. So for me, it's having the ability to stay, try to stay even keel as possible, whether it's a good day or a bad day. If we have a bad day, okay, flush it. It's the next day. If we have a good day, great, flush it. It's the next day. I've heard so many stories of a guy like Craig Kimbrell, who was one of the best, closers in baseball, had so many saves the last 2 years. He hasn't done well, but when he comes in the clubhouse the next day, you would have no idea that he gave up the game the day before. He just had 30 consecutive saves, whatever it may be. It's all about being the same guy as when you're going good and being the same guy as when things are going bad, so that eventually things can get back on track and try to stay as even keel as possible.
And Kobe Bryant echoed that same thing, where he said, whether you win or whether you lose, the process remains the same. And you're asking yourself, what did I do well? What do I want to do better? How am I going to do it? And that's something that you mentioned earlier. People listen to this, you're going to have to go back and listen to it a couple of times because there's so many nuggets that were dropped. But, Corbin talked about identifying what I do well, what I want to do better. How am I going to do it? Well, Corbin, I want to be respectful of your time, man. Thank you for joining us here today on the Mental Performance Mastery Podcast and sharing a little insight into kind of how you work the mental game. For anybody who's listening, please check out and engage with Corbin on Instagram at Corbin Burnes. You can see some of the things he's got going on there, and kind of stay up on his career and following him, because not only is he a great pitcher, he's even better off the field, man. And when talk about somebody who's classy, somebody who's humble, somebody who cares about not only his success, but the success of other people and wanting to grow the game. So Corbin, thanks for being with us, man. Looking forward to watching your continuing success and your continuing progress in the game of baseball, brother. Thank you.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you guys, and thanks for all your questions, and thanks for having me on.
Hey, thanks for checking out this podcast. This is Brian Cain, and I would love for you to leave us a review if you've enjoyed the show. I'd also love to engage with you directly on social media, so please reach out on Instagram or Twitter at Brian Cain Peak. And then make sure you head over to briancain.com and check out some of our articles on our blog, some of our videos. And if you're a coach looking to master mental performance and up your game so you can help your clients get the results they've been looking for, check out my Mental Performance Mastery Coaches certification, where we teach you about the mindset, routines, and habits that your clients need to get the results they've been looking for. If you're an athlete or a performer listening to this podcast, head over to briancain.com and click on athletes. Check out my 30 days to mental performance mastery for athletes program, where I walk you through and coach you virtually to help you master the mental game and give yourself the best chance for success. Thanks for being with us here on the podcast. Let's dominate the day.